Welcome back to the Isn't That Rich podcast. I'm your host, Jill Franks.
And I'm Ashley McVicker.
And today we're sitting down with the co-chairman of the HerrinFesta Italiana, Kelly Green and Joey Helleny. And we are going to talk about festivals and all that goes into planning and creating something magical for the community. And it's a lot more than parades and Ferris wheels and all that. So we're excited to have both of them on today to tell us how it impacts the economy.
Yeah, and I know both of you were just elected co-chairman, weren't you? So welcome on, first of all, and I want to just talk about that first with HerrinFesta.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your history with HerrinFesta.
Well, this was our 35th year, and I started in year 2. So I've had 34 years with Festa, and was very honored to be asked to be co-chair after our previous president, Christopher Penny, decided it was time to retire and enjoy life a little bit. And one of the stipulations was I'll co-chair, but Kelly's got to do the other half.
Always got to have Kelly Green with you.
That's right.
Well, I was very honored to have that designation as well as a co-chairman. I've not been on the committee as long as Joey. In fact, I was trying to remember exactly what year I went on. I started as a volunteer chairman and then migrated up to be the secretary-treasurer. But it's quite the tradition in Heron, and I'm so honored to be able to carry that tradition on in the capacity as a co-chairman, and especially honored to serve with Joey.
That's awesome. So this was your first year doing this.
Correct.
I mean, as chairman.
Correct.
And we are just coming off the Festa. I mean, we are a week past the Festa, right. So the dust has settled a little bit. Tell me about your first year as co-chairman. How did that go?
I think it went really well. I mean, we have a great team. I mean, we have a good committee of about a dozen people, mm-hmm. and they all know, most of them have been doing what they do for a long time. So we're just kind of traffic cops, making sure that, everybody knows what everybody else is doing and kind of picking up the pieces that might get overlooked a little bit, but they do the bulk of the work. And so I think it went really well.
I would agree with that. Another complication, not necessarily complication, but just a hurdle that we had to jump this year as well, is that we lost our secretary as well. So we had a learning curve to get through to figure out, okay, what all needs to happen when, so that we don't miss something like getting the liquor license squared away, getting the license plates all squared away with the Secretary of State. The little things that have to happen along the way, making sure all of the resolutions are set with the city and things like that. So I think it went extremely well, considering, and the fact that we do have that strong core group of volunteers serving as committee members. It basically, it drives itself. People have done it long enough that you just make sure that they don't need anything, and it moves forward.
And we're very lucky that I think the two most detail-oriented people I know are Kelly and our new executive secretary, Terry Rickey. I mean, they make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. They're very good at that.
Yeah, we know that from working with Kelly. Yeah. She is a detail-oriented person, definitely.
Well, thank you.
Yes, for sure. So when people think of festivals, they see the production, the event itself, but it doesn't start then. It starts a long time prior to that. So when does planning begin for Festa?
Really during the previous Festa.
Really?
We have a list in our festival office of what we need to look at for next year, or what are ideas for next year, or what could we do better next year. So it really starts during Festa, and then we kind of take about a month off to let everybody take a breath and think about things, and that also allows us to kind of catch up on our payables and receivables. So when we do meet as a committee, we kind of have a decent idea of how we did financially.
I think it also gives us the opportunity to speak to those in the community to see what they liked, what we could do better, get that feedback as well. But Joy's 100% correct. The list is there. We've already started thinking about ways that we can make, things better. We just had a really good conversation in the office. Probably it was a Sunday, about doing some really cool things with kids that center back to, I don't want to give all of our secrets away for next year, but there's going to be some really neat things that we're going to try to do next year that bring back the history of our Italian heritage in Herrin and link all of that back. And I'm so excited. I can't wait.
I would love for you guys to talk about the transition from when, I think it was kind of during COVID when all of that happened, because HerrinFesta, I feel like since I've been around it, has been known for the gigantic concerts. I would love if you guys talked about, kind of the switch between having those big concerts and, now Farmer State Bank is a sponsor of the free entertainment tent, and we have smaller bands in there, and it's more accessible to people. People don't have to pay for it. So what was that transition like? And, I feel like lots of people ask about that. Probably you guys that's probably your biggest question. Why don't you have the big bands anymore? So maybe would love to just hear it from your perspective about all of that.
I can start if you want.
Go. Yes.
Well,
Is that a super loaded question? You guys are like, oh, we get this all the time.
we do get this. And, it's a fair question. But first of all, big time entertainment has gotten hugely expensive. And remember, every time that we put on one of those outdoor concerts, we were risking money, a lot of money.
Right. And the point of HerrinFesta is to generate money for our community.
Right. For the Heron Chamber of Commerce.
I think that's what people don't
remember. And the
remember.
Civic Center. And so, it's one thing to take a risk on a band that's $40,000, which when we went to big time entertainment was kind of in the area we were in. But now those same bands are $100,000. And so it was really difficult for us to put that much money at risk. Plus, in those intervening years, there's a lot more other places that are doing bigger concerts. Walker's Bluff is doing concerts, and the Marion Cultural and Civic Center has a, big array of concerts. So, the competition for those acts and for those audiences was more acute. So, and plus, it was an enormous amount of work for volunteers to do all that ticketing and setting up chairs and staging and, all that stuff. So it was not an easy decision by any means.
No. And I think people need to understand at that point in time, pre-COVID, or year 2020, our budget for what we had for HerrinFesta was somewhere around $800,000.
Wow.
And once again, huge financial risk. Those acts, yes, they are super expensive, but I would have to say more than anything, the amount of volunteers that it takes to put that on is, people just can't get their head wrapped around what you have to have. We would have, we had a partnership with FBLA, the Heron FBLA, and they would be our kids to check everybody in. There would be at least 20 people just getting people checked in. Not to consider, what it took to get the VIP tent set up, to make those sponsorship dollars worth the while, to be able to bring that big entertainment tent. Somebody's got to go in and clean those things up in between. So it's just amazing that the staff that has to go in overnight and pick up, the cups
Tons
and
of
things,
trash.
all
Tons
the
of
trash.
Yeah.
And everything that would flow outside after that. It's just a huge undertaking. This business model that we have now is so much more successful. It's indirectly more family friendly. We have the opportunities to have more families out at all given times while the Midway's open. So it's a much more successful model for us. Yes, it was wonderful at one time. It was a catalyst to win the best festival in Illinois at one point in time, which we're still very proud of. But moving forward, unless we were to have a massive army full of volunteers and someone to win the lottery and say, okay, here's a little nest egg for you guys to be able to have and put this on for the future, it's not likely that we will ever go back to that again.
Yeah. People don't realize how much it takes to put something like that on. I mean, like you mentioned, the volunteers, the risks you're taking, probably the insurance just to buy, that you had to purchase to put something like this on.
The cost of lights and sound
Yeah.
for a big stage, and that stage itself, which we rented. We still rent a stage and lights and sound, but it's a much smaller setup under the tent, and so a lot less expensive. So there was a lot that went into doing those big concerts. And do I miss them? Sure, but do I miss we were there like till 1:30 or 2 a.m. Do I miss that? No. Yeah.
Plus, you don't even think about the security that it takes. I mean, you're putting in barriers and all of this infrastructure that we're not even considering. It
used to take us a couple of weeks to set up the festival grounds and another week to tear it down. Yeah. It's not that bad anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. You mentioned something, and I think it's a vital part of any kind of event like that, and it's your volunteers. I want to know how many volunteers it takes to put on something like this. I know, Kelly, you were working with volunteers quite a bit.
We probably have now in the realm of, I would say, when you're talking about all the events combined, 100. I think that's safe.
I'm going to say 100, 150 somewhere, yeah.
Well, and when you're talking about a small town,
that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
We know that 100 people in a small town is a lot to get coordinated for anything. So,
but again, just like I said at the beginning, we have, people on our committee that are in charge of individual events. So Kevin Frost and his dad, Pete, they handle Bochi. So they get their volunteers. They recruit the people that they know and that have worked with them for years and years and years. And so each area kind of recruits in its own circle.
I see.
So that makes it easier. It's just not Kelly going out and looking for volunteers.
No. And, same thing with the golf tournament. We have our crew that we have, and there's, anywhere between 10 to 15 that help out with that. Some of that's beforehand. And that doesn't even consider the fact of the people that are volunteering time before the event ever happens.
Right.
They may not necessarily be there on site, but they've done, several different jobs in the precursor and that pre-event planning stage as well that get us where we need to be come Memorial Day.
I am really excited to talk about this because, like we said at the beginning, I think people, when they don't volunteer and they're not behind the scenes, they just see all of the pretty stuff. They see the carnival, they see the golf scramble, they see the concerts, but there's much more to it. I want to talk about first of all, just the traffic you see come to our area, our small town, and what kind of influence that has on our local economy.
Well, I can talk a little bit about that because I'm also on the Visit SI board, the
Perfect.
Tourism Bureau. And at Visit SI, we subscribe to a service that tracks visitors by cell phone pings. So if you allow, not everybody allows location sharing on their phone, but a lot of people do. So it can tell when somebody comes into a geographical area that we define, and if they're there for more than 3 hours, we count them as a visitor.
Right.
If they're just driving through I-57, that doesn't count.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But so we don't have this year's numbers yet, but last year, we geographically drew a line around basically downtown Heron. Mm-hmm. And we can tell you over the days of HerrinFesta, there were about 69,000 unique cell phone addresses that were indicated in that time. A lot of them on Saturday for the parade.
Right.
We can also tell you that about 3,100 of those were from more than 50 miles away.
Wow.
So those are people that spent money in local restaurants, maybe bought gasoline. Some of them may have stayed overnight in hotels here in Marion. The tourism people have some formulas they like to use about, how much spending that creates too. But even if you consider of each of those 3,100 people spending, $200, which is pretty easy to do if you're going to a carnival and a restaurant and maybe buying gas. That's a pretty significant influx of money from people out of the area into Southern Illinois for the festival, plus just the local people that come into town. I mean, 67,000, we don't have that many people in Heron, so we know we have a lot of friends coming to town to not only enjoy the festival, but maybe go to Louis P&R or buy a barbecue at Chuck's or stop at
Polar Whip,
Energy's finest restaurant, or whatever.
It's my husband's favorite. Every time I drive through here, and he's like, "Please stop and get me a Polar Whip."
There's a lot of people that share that. Yeah, so we know it has an economic impact.
Yeah. We
also know, and we have to be honest about this, that we inconvenience some businesses in Heron. We set up a merry-go-round in front of some people's front doors.
Yeah.
And so they have
could be good marketing though, maybe if people, walk by, they're like, that's cute.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the smart ones figure out a way to make it work.
Right.
Embrace it.
But so, all we can do is, apologize that, that's just a few days out of the year, but we also know that we inconvenience a few people too.
Many people don't realize that the money that comes into Heron will generally bounce around in our community about 7 times, and that's huge. From the time that money is spent, it's going to go to the city, which then pays the workers, and then it continues to bounce around from there.
Yeah.
And I'm always reminded of we have a great relationship with our city government, but one of our previous mayors, Mayor Ed Quaglia, famously to me said, "I think." This is him talking. I think it's just as important for a city to provide recreation for its citizens as it is to fix a pothole in the street. And so he had that attitude that, things like Festa are necessary and good. And if you look at, major cities, having street festivals or things, that's part of having a good, vibrant community. Nobody wants to live in a place where nothing ever happens, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Just to echo off that too, I remember attending the very first Festa, and everybody asked, why do you get involved and what have you? Your last name's Green. There's nothing Italian there. Well, my mother-in-law was Italian. Her maiden name was Capoletti. And I remember the joy and the pride that she had about the festival coming to town. And she brought her mother and her great aunt down, and they celebrated, and we had risotto from Antoinette's, and there was all kinds of good things there. And I think it's so important to provide good memories. This is the opportunity for some kids in our town who may never get to go anywhere to have their own little Disney World when Festa comes to town with the carnival. So it's so important to echo exactly what Mayor Quaglia said. It's important to do those things just as it is to fix a pothole. We're bringing memories, we're bringing good times, and celebrating that Italian heritage while we're there.
Unfortunately, our current mayor, Steve Fertini, feels the same way, and he's very supportive, as is the city council. And we couldn't possibly do it without their support and the Civic Center support.
Absolutely. You're so right that every community needs some place to go, something to do, something to look forward to. And that's very much HerrinFesta for the city of Heron. I would love to talk about the why. Why is HerrinFesta a thing? How did it start? Like what's the purpose? What does it do, for the community, or what else? Because I know you have a lot of goals that you try to meet, whether it's scholarships or, there's things that
just giving back to the community.
Yeah. So what's the
subsidiary of the Chamber of Commerce?
The origin of Festa started at a Heron Chamber of Commerce retreat. And, they were just kicking around ideas. And Dutch Dalich from here in Marion, the former owner of W3D, that's what he was doing at the time, said, you guys have a rich Italian heritage. You ought to use that as a hook to promote some sort of event.
Yeah.
And so some of the community leaders at that event said, that's a good idea. We ought to do something with that. So they started out, pretty modestly with a small carnival. And I think our first year act was John Donosky and his accordion on the back steps of the Civic Center.
Really?
Yeah. So, it started very modestly and has grown from there. But it's an homage to not just our Italian history, but the history of immigrants throughout Southern Illinois. Our whole region was a lot built by immigrants that came at the beginning of the 20th century, many to work in the coal mines because there were jobs here. And so whether they were Italians in Heron or Czechs in Ziegler or wherever, our region has a rich history of early 20th century immigrants. And so we wanted to kind of do our part to not forget that, to remind people that what the origins of our town were, and to have some fun while we did it.
There's so much rich history in our area that we, our younger generations, I think about, the kids growing up, they might not even realize that this community had coal mines at one point, or that, there was a large Italian community right here. And so it's fun to see that being celebrated.
If I can put in a little plug, we have a relatively new organization in Heron called the Heron Heritage Club. And it meets monthly or every other month. And members take turns presenting the story of their families. So my dad's family my grandparents came from Syria. Mm-hmm. So I gave a presentation, my brother and sister and I gave a presentation about when they came here and why they came here, and who the children were and what they ended up doing. And other people in the club have done the same thing, whatever their heritage were. Mm-hmm. And I think Michael Ann Stanley, the retired Heron High School language teacher, has founded that and ramrodded that. And it's been a lot of fun to not only do it from my family, but to listen to everybody else talk about how their family got here. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of almost a good offshoot off of Festa.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Not only do you guys have the Heritage Club that you started, but I feel like there's a lot of other offshoots this year with events, specifically because Herrin turned 125 years old this year.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to talk about maybe how that big number is playing out this year, and how, that had anything to do with HerrinFesta celebrating that milestone? Anything with that?
With the 125th anniversary, I think it's just an opportunity to revisit Herrin's roots as a whole. Joy mentioned the strong presence of coal miners, but also at one point in time there were railroads. My family history has to do with railroads. That's how my dad's family ended up being in the Heron Hurstbush area. But just getting back to our roots so that we don't forget, the history of Heron, how it started as Heron's Prairie, all the different ways that we had industry at one point in time. It was huge. I always loved to go back and look at pictures and see what Heron was like. And for me, growing up, as I mentioned, my dad, he grew up in Hearst. But Heron was always important to me when I would go travel and visit my grandparents, because I always knew when we were halfway home, getting home, because I would always see the clock on the bank of Heron, the side of the building. At one point in time, Dad would always talk about the doughboy being in the middle of town, and there would always be a traffic accident or something there because somebody would miss the roundabout there. But just an opportunity for us to revisit, go back and take a look at all the different ways that Heron has been impactful in Southern Illinois, whether it was through the coal mines, through the railroads, through industry.
A lot of merchants at the
exactly, just exactly what I was going to say.
People came to Heron. People came to Heron to shop, just as people in the later time went to the mall to shop, because we had, 3 men's stores and 5 or 6 women's clothing stores.
Wow.
It was a pretty big retail center at one time.
At one time, Heron has it. That was the the motto.
Oh, I
Heron
love
has
that.
it.
Yeah.
But I can remember before the mall, yes, you went to Heron to get your clothes for school.
Right.
And it was a shopping capital. I remember Heron being that, and then also Murfreesboro from years ago. But it's just important for kids to get the opportunity to see that, revisit that.
And I just think it's a big year for our community too, being the 125th anniversary, because what the Chamber of Commerce has planned and the Heritage Club and all of this, you know, we started out with a really big annual dinner and got people excited for that. And then you get people excited for HerrinFesta. And we also planted, you know, these trees with our sister city in Italy. Like, I just think it's so cool how many events that we actually have, that they aren't separate events. It's all about celebrating our town and where we're from. And so I just think it's wonderful.
I think it's really cool that we've developed a sister city relationship with Cajono, Italy. And they're always happy to link up with us over, you know, the internet or welcome visitors. If people are visiting Italy and they stop by Cajono, they're going to get the first class welcome there. So it's neat that we've developed that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So if people go over to Italy and visit,
They
you'll help connect.
They should go to Cajono and they'll get the treatment.
They will roll out the red carpet for them.
That's amazing. Tom and I are planning a little Italy trip, so I might be in touch.
Yeah.
Cute. Fun. So it takes a lot of people from the community. You said sometimes it's an imposition to these community members, but also there are a lot of community members that really support the Festa and in forms of sponsorships.
Oh, sure.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about that and how the community comes together in form of sponsorship to help put this on.
Well, you know, as I said, we couldn't do it without the city. We couldn't do it without the Civic Center. And we darn well couldn't do it without our sponsors, because it takes a lot of money to put on a festival like this. You know, just for instance, people don't think about this. We invested this year, all of our vendors hook up to electricity. And we have electrical boxes around the festival grounds to provide them. Well, eventually those electrical boxes get old and obsolete. So we spent $5 or $6 grand this year just updating a couple of those boxes.
Yeah.
And that happens on a regular basis. So, you know, we just can't make that money out of the air, thin air. So people have to help us finance the festival. And it's people like Farmers State Bank or Pepsi Mid-America or Offenburg or any of the other probably 30, 40, I don't know, maybe 50 sponsors that help us do this. We couldn't do it without them.
Yeah.
There's at least, I would say, 50 sponsors that help us get all the moving parts moving at the beginning of the festival. And I think it's important for people to remember, too, when they invest those sponsorship dollars, they can make those dollars work for them however they would like. So it's more than just the donation of money. It's a donation of time and talent as well. And I feel like there are sponsors that really do an excellent job of making those sponsorship dollars bring business back in through their doors.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like you guys do, and Nina does a really good job of this, of like getting sponsorships, but also making the sponsors feel very special. And like, how can we promote your business? It really feels like a partnership rather than, you know, sometimes you do a sponsorship and they throw a banner up and you never talk to them again.
It's just a donation.
I feel like HerrinFesta is really good at drawing the sponsors in.
You know, and some of our sponsors, like for instance, IBEW and Nika.
Jill calls it IBU. So funny.
I will forever. It's always IBU.
IBU. I go, it's IBEW.
They use that as an opportunity to invite their members to come to Heron, particularly on Saturday, and march in the parade and enjoy the Festa and, you know, enjoy the carnival. So they get their members involved in having fun on at least one day of the festival. And other sponsors might use some of the perks to reward an employee. You know, if they say, hey, would you like to come to the sponsor dinner or the sponsor party? And, that way, whoever the employee of the month is or whatever might get to be, feel kind of special.
Yeah. And I think, didn't Mary's cater the sponsors dinner this year? Or somebody, was it
Mary's? Mary's catered the mayor's
dinner.
honorary dinner.
So,
and KFS Events, Kings, did the sponsor party.
So these meals are pretty special.
And then,
You're not going to get a bad meal at
and then
tell you that.
the corporate bocce tournament on Friday, which is always sold out and has a waiting list. Mary's caters that too, and they have lasagna, and it is really good.
And one thing I think it's important to mention too, with regard to the sponsors party, which we just touched on, that's an excellent opportunity for sponsors to get out and forge some partnerships, do some networking, find some ways that you can work together as business people and sponsor or just network and do good things. There's so many different relationships that can be built through that. And it's just once again, it's a week-long celebration, but there's different opportunities through the honorees banquet, through the corporate bocce especially, and that sponsors party to meet some new friends, and the golf tournament too, sure.
I think our corporate bocce tournament is maybe the best networking opportunity of any in all of Southern Illinois throughout the year.
I would agree with that.
I wouldn't. It's not for me because I'm mad because we lost, so I'm sitting in a corner not talking to anybody.
Well, for most people. Because for me, it is.
Yeah.
Quinn Laird lost it for us. I'm going to say that on camera.
He will love that.
I was making fun of him for it at the parade. It's fine.
And speaking of the parade, that's just, I think at one point in time, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. I remember growing up, the one parade that happened in Southern Illinois was the Apple Festival.
Sure.
That was the one you had to go because all the bands from St. Louis, the drum and bugle corps, bands would come down and what have you, had to go watch that. But I feel like our Grand Parade now is the premier parade in Southern Illinois. I've never seen so many people come out in my life. I'm waiting for the point where we start getting like Murfreesboro, where the lawn chairs are set up, a couple weeks in advance and what have you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But Joe Helleny does a fantastic job of getting that set up with the parade marshals that he has. It is so much fun to walk that stretch of road and see the kids, and once again, it's like their Disneyland. It's wonderful.
And along with that, having maybe the best parades in Illinois, I firmly believe we have the best Midway in Southern Illinois, other than the DuQuoin State Fair. So we have the largest Midway. We contract with the biggest carnival company in the country, in North America. Wow. And we're the only place around here, other than DuQuoin, that they play. So the kind of bookends the summer. We've got a really huge, nice Midway at Memorial Day here, and we've got another huge, nice Midway Labor Day at the end of summer at DuQuoin. So we're very proud of our partnership with North America Midway Entertainment. They do a great job. They have great rides and very personable employees, and we're happy that they're our partners. You talk about the expense. Some of the big rides, that you saw along the one street there that are, huge. Mm-hmm. They call that in the business, those are called spectaculars. And we had, maybe five spectacular rides. Wow. Each of those rides costs over $1 million.
Wow.
So if you wonder why a ride band costs $30, that's why. It takes a little bit of money to finance the level of rides that a big carnival like we bring has to pay to put that up and travel with it and pay all the expenses that go along with it. And we're really happy to have what I think is really the best carnival in Southern Illinois.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely. So it's expensive to put something like this on. Is there ever money left over that you funnel back into the community through scholarships or things like that? I know there is some aspect to that.
You just threw us a big softball.
Okay, there we go. Let's hear about it.
That's our goal.
Yeah.
Our goal is to, of course, not lose money, but also make enough money to first of all, we share it with the Chamber of Commerce. We're a major fundraiser for our chamber. We're a major fundraiser for our civic center. And Kelly, you want to go from there? Scholarships,
and this is something that we just started this year, and that's called the Century Club. And so this is something new that we wanted to have the opportunity to roll out for individuals. You know, they may not want to drop $10,000 for a sponsorship, but they can do $100 a year, and so they get a special little pin. Have mine on right here. And all the money that is raised from that Century Club is going to go to fund scholarships at the high school. The golf tournament that we do with farmers in partnership with HerrinFesta, Italiana, all the money that goes from that goes towards scholarships at the high school. And I think, people think, well, the high school is giving out scholarships or what have you, but if you've not looked at the price of college lately, it takes a lot to get someone to achieve their dream with their college experience. But we also donate, to people that are helping us with, like the Heron Women's Club. They are an information center inside the Civic Center itself. So they provide that, well, where do you find this? Where do you find that information? We make a donation to them. We've been very fortunate to be able to help support the Haven. So we help our veterans. We're just doing a lot of good things within the community.
The Heron House of Hope helps us with cleanup. So we make a donation to them. We also, this year, the FBLA did their first pickleball tournament, so they get to raise some money, along with Festa. So, if you start looking about all the different areas that are able to get a little support from us, we try.
Yeah.
One of the things that we always put in our budget, it's always a line item, is to help with the fireworks for Heron. So once again, it's a situation where we're providing further entertainment for our citizens by being an underwriter for the fireworks display on July 4th.
And the bocce courts, 50 weeks out of the year, they belong to the Heron Bocce Club. And 2 weeks a year, they belong to Festa. So we make a donation to the Bocce Club each year to help with the maintenance and upkeep of those bocce courts. So there's, try to spread it around.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not just a 1 week thing. It goes a lot further than what people realize.
And I want to go back to another thing that people don't think about is the cleanup. I mentioned the cleanup that the House of Hope helps us with. And our Grand Parade Marshal this year, Bob Chalufo, is the kind of the ramrod of our cleanup efforts. And so people don't realize that he's up in the mornings of Festa at like 3:30 in the morning, and with the House of Hope people, and the sheriff is kind enough to send some of the trustees over to help with cleanup to make sure that by the time people head off to work, there's not mounds of trash all up and down Park Avenue or 16th Street or in the parking lots of downtown. Yeah. That's just, work that is not fun.
Yeah, and not acknowledged all the time. It's a thankless job that cleanup is. But it is the most important, I think. Absolutely.
And he's been doing that for at least 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah, probably.
What else? Is there anything else you would want listeners to know about the Festa that we haven't covered today?
It's a labor of love. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. When I mentioned the very first Festa that I got to go to with my future mother-in-law at the time, hugely proud to be I'm going to say that I'm an IBMer. I'm Italian by marriage. It's wonderful to see that history out there on display. It's okay to be proud of your roots. And it's okay to celebrate that. And I think that's just so important. And I feel like that's one thing that we get right in Heron is the fact that we are not afraid to say where we come from. We acknowledge, the good and the bad. And we want that to perpetuate into the future. And so my one challenge that I would put out to everybody at this point is, if you're proud of your heritage, whether it's Lithuanian, Irish, Italian, what have you, get involved in your community. Come out and help us. Help celebrate what good things we do have going on in Heron. And once again, going back to my husband's lineage, I can remember. So there's an establishment in town. Everybody knows it. It's called Chevy's, but people don't realize before that was Chevy's, it was actually a confectionery, and his family owned that. And it gives me pride to be able to tell that to my children, that hopefully they'll tell my grandchildren one of these days, if I have them, if I'm lucky enough to say, you are an important part of this community. This is what the immigrants from Italy did, and you're here, and we're able to do things because they had that vision to come to the United States.
Yeah.
I'm not Italian. Kelly's not Italian.
No.
So the two co-chairs of HerrinFesta Italiana are not Italian, but we care about our community.
Yeah.
And the vibrancy of a community, whether it's Heron or Marion or West Frankfort or wherever, depends on people willing to step up and do things, to step up and give back. So, one of the things that we've been happy to do over the years, we've had people from other communities come in and pick our brains. How do you do this? What do you do? And we're more than happy to help, because we want to encourage every community to try to have events like ours or whatever fits their own community. And we want to encourage people to step up and say, hey, I want to help.
Yeah.
Well, however they can. Maybe they can't drive a tent pole, but maybe they're good at bookkeeping or whatever their talent is. There's some place in your community that can use your help, whether it's the library or, the teen center or, the park or whatever. There's some organization in your town that can use your help. So do it.
Yeah. We always like to say, there's no greater fulfillment in life than serving others. And this is an excellent opportunity for people to get involved, to serve, and to represent their community in that way.
And you get so much out of it yourself when you do that.
Yeah.
I can honestly say, in the time that I have spent in my years in serving in various capacities in Heron, I am so very thankful, because I have built lifelong friendships that I will carry with me forever.
Yeah.
It's hugely impactful for me as a person. I always like to think that, the people will say, well, you're involved in a lot of things. I'm like, yes, but my cup runs over. I'm so enriched from that experience. And it's wonderful. People should experience that too.
And who doesn't want to throw a big party and invite all your friends?
Right.
Well, and you say that, and, it's one of those things where, it's for the school system. A lot of people will plan their class reunions 2 different times of year. It will always be Memorial Day weekend, so they can celebrate and take advantage of HerrinFesta at the same time, or for homecoming in the fall. And so it's wonderful to see those things get planned.
And even if it's not an official reunion, you'll always see lots of people in Heron that weekend that live somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, for instance, the Carla Pagano is her maiden name, family that owns Mary's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her whole family was here for the Memorial Day weekend, from all over the country. So, that's just the thing that happens.
Special time.
Yeah. And I would be remiss if I just didn't thank you folks personally for what you've done to help us with Festa. As I said, we couldn't do it without our sponsors and the people that care, and you've certainly stepped up to help us.
Thank you. It's been fun. We've been involved 3 years or 4 years? 3 years, I think, Kelly, right?
I mean, since we came to here.
4 years now.
Time flies when you're having
It
fun.
does.
Exactly. And just if I could touch on one more thing, it just happened to come into my mind. One of the things that we always honor is a Lifetime Achievement Award winner. And if you look at some of the people that are from Herrin, Illinois, and the things that they have gone on to do, like Steve Fisher, Rita Branca, it's amazing to see the people that have left Herrin, gone out and done some wonderful things in this world. And so I'm just anxious to see what those next award winners are. Steve Miller was our recent award winner for that, and what he's done with the pony organization throughout the world. He makes an impact. So it's just it's such a wonderful event, and so very proud that I get to be a part of it, especially from the aspect of being able to give our community that opportunity to shine.
So I think we should have a little fun rapid fire question about HerrinFesta Italiana to end this episode. And you guys are going to tell us your favorite things. So the first one is, what's the favorite band or act that you've ever seen perform at HerrinFesta?
Okay, I'm going to say mine was REO Speedwagon, even though they only played 3 songs. But I grew up listening to them, and that was the one band, and Joey will tell you, like, I don't care what. I just want to go meet those guys because I grew up my whole, junior high listening to, their records and things like that. And so that was the one time I almost had an opportunity. I did not get to meet them, but that was the one band I was like so excited to get to see.
And you know what's so funny about that? I was on the news in high school on Miss Frankel's class, in media class. So we would do the morning news, and none of us knew that it was REO Speedwagon. We all go, playing at HerrinFesta this week is REO Speedwagon.
Oh, no.
So it's your favorite band. And we were like, what's REO Speedwagon?
It's a tough one, but probably the Beach Boys.
The Beach Boys played at HerrinFesta.
The Beach Boys.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my favorite. I wasn't there, but that would have been mine too.
I loved Florida Georgia Line.
They played too. Yes, I saw Florida
my
Georgia
gosh,
Line.
Florida Georgia Line.
That was like their summer that they were getting huge.
That was the biggest crowd we've ever had.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Sanity is what that was. And the rain came at just the wrong time, trying to get everybody in and out.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it was,
We had people from all over the country come to that show.
Yeah.
we had a line.
Literally all over the country.
Yes.
I believe it.
We had a line from the entrance to the piazza that wound all through the Midway out to the Park Avenue.
Waiting to get
It
in.
was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite food that you can, food vendor. What can you get there and what's your favorite?
Um,
Corn dogs.
Corn dog.
Salamate from Louis P&R.
yeah, of course they weren't there this year,
Yeah.
but yeah. Before that, but this year I would say King's Taters.
Or a funnel cake. You can't beat a funnel cake. Okay, what's your favorite, funniest behind the scenes moment?
When we had to go to the local dive bar to drag Blake Shelton out of the bar to come play in time for his concert.
The shade.
Oh my God.
Okay, I don't remember that.
You're kidding me.
No.
Is
So
funny.
he did a sound check, and he said, "Where's the nearest dive bar?" So we pointed him. At the time, it was called the Hollywood Tavern. People watching this may remember the Hollywood Tavern, which is truly a dive bar where Sanctuary it is now.
Okay.
And so it's getting closer and closer to concert time, and no Blake. So couple of our backstage people went down to the Hollywood and kind of had to drag. Come on, Blake, it's time to play.
Yeah. Ooh. What's yours, Kelly?
Years ago, the Chamber of Commerce used to do a drawing for a trip to Italy. And so my favorite thing to get to do is get to go up on stage. And usually we would draw for that on Sunday night. I think it was Sunday night. But I would get to go up there and hold the wheel and get to announce that. And it's not nearly as exciting as dragging Blake Shelton out of a bar. But it was just so much fun because you could go up on the stage and you would see all the people out there. And it was just amazing to see the number of people. And probably the second was the one time I got to go up on stage for Jake Owen and throw out T-shirts from the crowd. That was a good time.
That's so fun.
That was fun. Mm-hmm. Anything else you guys want to share about Festa before we wrap up today?
My hope and dream is that we get to bring back the Grape Stomp next year because
Like to
that's
do
my
that.
favorite event of all times. It's just an absolute riot. People love it. Anybody can do it, and it's just so much fun.
So what
I
is it
miss
going to
those-
take to get that back, Kelly? Does someone have to step up and volunteer?
We actually have a plan.
Okay.
And we're also bringing back the pasta sauce contest next year.
Fun.
So if you guys want to start on your recipe and bring a crock pot of your famous pasta sauce, you can enter.
Okay.
I'm just looking forward to seeing you, Ashley, dress up like Lucille Ball from I Love Lucy and get an Edith so that you can be in the grape vat and start stomping those grapes next year.
Do it.
Oh, well.
Should do it.
Sign me up.
Okay, I'll do it. It's a good time.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here today. This was
you
fun to
for-
sit down and
Yeah, thank you for
chat
having
about
us.
it.
It's been a pleasure. We're very honored.
And congrats on your first year of Festa
Yes.
behind you.
Yes.
You made it.
Walking out of the office on Monday night about 9:00 was a relief, I have to say. So
It's over.
yes, it's over, but then
And
it's
then it's
also
gonna start in a month.
exciting.
We're always excited when it starts, and we're always excited when it ends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if it's been successful. And I would call this year a success. We had lots of happy faces on the Midway. So
If people want to volunteer next year, how do they get in touch?
Go to the HerrinFesta.com website, and there's contact information there.
Okay.
And just send us a message to office@HerrinFesta.com if you just want to email, and we'll get back in touch with you.
Well, good. Hopefully we have a bunch of new, inspired, younger generation of volunteers for you next year.
absolutely. And if people are scared by technology, if you see Joey on the street, you see me on the street, just, hey, I want to volunteer, and we will put you down.
And we're always looking for ideas. We're not the only creative people in town. If you got an idea for an event or how we could do something better, some of the ideas we get are not always practical, but we're always willing to hear them.
For sure.
Addison or Miss Festa this year had an excellent idea for something that we're hoping that we're going to be able to do next year. And as you wouldn't think that it has anything to do with Italy, but it absolutely does. So not to divulge anything, but kudos
She's
to
good at
Addison
these,
for a great
these
idea.
secret clues.
Yeah, you
isn't
guys
she?
trying to say
Lots
lots of
of,
secret information she wants to tell
throwing
us.
it
got,
out
like,
there
the-
to try to get people
Getting the
to
hook set.
reel it in. So
You have to volunteer for Kelly to tell you what's going on.
There you go.
Exactly.
Or maybe listen to this podcast next spring.
That's
There
right.
you go.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks again, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to our listeners. We will see you next week.
So, Jill, where do we go from here?
Be sure to check out our show notes for this episode, and also be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.